In the heart of a dense, ancient forest, there was a legend that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest souls. It was said that beneath the twisted canopy of the trees lay an unspeakable evil, an entity that thrived on the fear of those who dared to venture into its territory. This was the backdrop for a chilling tale of horror, a story that began with a group of 5 adventurous teenagers determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the depths of the forest. The teenagers, Mike, Sarah, Alex, Emily, and Mark, were inseparable friends who had grown up hearing tales of the forest's dark past. They decided to embark on a camping trip that would take them deep into the heart of the woods, where no one else dared to venture. Armed with tents, backpacks, and a sense of youthful invincibility, they set off one crisp autumn afternoon. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows among the ancient trees, the group made camp near a small, tranquil lake. Around a crackling campfire, they shared stories, laughter, and roasted marshmallows, unaware of the darkness that loomed just beyond their flickering light. The first night passed without incident, and the teenagers reveled in the thrill of their adventure. However, the forest seemed to come alive with strange sounds after nightfall, as if it were whispering secrets that only the trees could comprehend. Unbeknownst to them, their intrusion into this forbidden realm had awakened an ancient malevolence. On the second day, they decided to explore deeper into the woods, hoping to discover the source of the eerie sounds they had heard the previous night. The further they ventured, the more the forest seemed to change. The trees grew gnarled and twisted, and the air became heavy with an oppressive silence that sent shivers down their spines. As the day wore on, they stumbled upon a long-forgotten, overgrown path that beckoned them forward. Their curiosity got the better of them, and they followed it deeper into the forest. The path led them to a clearing where an ominous sight awaited them, an ancient, decaying tree covered in strange symbols. As they approached the tree, a feeling of dread washed over them. The symbols seemed to writhe and shift, as if alive. The air grew colder, and the whispers in the shadows intensified. They tried to turn back, but the path had disappeared, leaving them trapped in the clearing. That night, the forest came alive with a sinister presence. The teenagers huddled together in their tents, their flashlights flickering as they attempted to ward off the encroaching darkness. The whispers grew louder and more insistent, as if the forest itself were taunting them. One by one, the teenagers succumbed to the terror that enveloped them. Mike claimed he saw shadowy figures lurking just beyond the campfire's glow. Sarah heard her name whispered in a sinister, disembodied voice. Alex felt an icy hand graze his shoulder, even though no one was near. Emily, paralyzed with fear, watched as Mark was pulled from his tent by an unseen force, his screams echoing through the night. She knew they were no longer alone in the forest. Something terrible had awakened, and it hungered for their fear. Desperation drove Emily to make a decision. She grabbed her backpack, left the safety of the tent, and ventured into the dark woods, guided by the chilling whispers. The forest seemed to come alive, the trees twisting and contorting, as if to block her path. Hours passed as Emily wandered deeper into the forest, haunted by the eerie sounds and unsettling shadows. She felt a presence drawing her closer to an ancient, gnarled tree. As she approached, the whispers reached a crescendo, filling her mind with unimaginable horrors. In a trance-like state, Emily touched the tree, and the symbols etched into its bark glowed with an otherworldly light. She realized that the forest itself was the source of the malevolence, an entity that fed on fear and despair. With a surge of determination, Emily reached into her backpack and retrieved a small canister of gasoline. She doused the tree and set it ablaze, its unholy symbols burning with an ethereal fire. The forest screamed in agony, its malevolent presence diminishing with each crackling flame. As the flames consumed the ancient tree, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. The whispers in the shadows faded, and the forest returned to an eerie but bearable silence. She knew that her friends were lost forever, victims of the forest's insatiable hunger. Emily emerged from the forest, forever changed by her harrowing experience. She knew that the legend of the haunted woods was all too real, and she had paid a terrible price for her curiosity. She vowed never to speak of the horrors she had witnessed, for fear that the malevolent entity might one day return. And so, the ancient forest kept its secrets, waiting patiently for the next group of unsuspecting souls to wander into its dark depths, lured by the whispers in the shadows. In a quiet, forgotten corner of the world, there stood another forest, one shrouded in eerie legends and whispered tales. It was a place where even the bravest souls hesitated to tread, a place where darkness reigned and fear thrived. This is where our second story of horror unfolds, a tale of a group of friends who, like those before them, dared to challenge the malevolent forces lurking within the woods. Meet Jake, Lisa, Ben, Chloe, and Ethan, 5 friends united by their shared fascination with the supernatural. They had grown up hearing stories of the haunted forest and decided to embark on a journey to confront the eerie mysteries hidden within its depths. The forest, dense and foreboding, stretched out as far as the eye could see, its ancient trees casting long, twisted shadows. As they entered, the whispers of the wind and rustling leaves seemed to mock their audacity. The group set up camp by a tranquil brook that flowed through the heart of the forest. Beneath a starlit sky, they shared ghost stories, laughter, and toasted marshmallows over the campfire. Unbeknownst to them, their arrival had awakened the dormant malevolence that resided within the woods. The first night passed without incident, and the friends reveled in their adventure. Yet, as darkness descended on the second night, the forest seemed to transform. The trees became gnarled and sinister, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. As they explored deeper into the woods, they stumbled upon a weathered, crumbling cabin, covered in bizarre symbols and etchings. The door creaked open with an otherworldly sigh as if inviting them in. Curiosity piqued, they entered the cabin, their flashlights cutting through the inky blackness. Inside, they found a collection of journals and artifacts, detailing the forest's dark history. It was believed that an ancient curse had bound a malevolent spirit to the woods, a spirit that fed on the fear and despair of those who ventured too close. The group's unease grew as the night wore on. They heard strange, ethereal whispers that echoed in the darkness, each voice carrying a hint of malice. It was as though the forest itself was trying to drive them away. Lisa claimed she saw shadowy figures moving in the corners of the cabin, and Ben felt an icy hand close around his wrist, its grip tightening with each passing moment. Chloe heard her name whispered from all directions, and Ethan was overwhelmed by an oppressive sense of dread. Terrified and desperate to escape, the group fled the cabin. They stumbled through the forest, trying to find their way back to the campsite, but the woods seemed to have shifted and changed, trapping them in a labyrinth of shadows. In their panic, they found themselves in a clearing, surrounded by the same eerie symbols that had adorned the cabin. The air grew colder, and the whispers became a cacophony of tormenting voices. The malevolent spirit had them cornered. With no other options, Chloe, guided by a strange compulsion, reached into her backpack and produced a vial of salt. She began to scatter it around the symbols, creating a protective barrier. As the salt touched the ground, the symbols faded, and the voices grew weaker. Desperation turned to determination as the group joined Chloe, casting salt upon the symbols. With each gesture, the forest's grip on them weakened. As the last symbol disappeared, the haunting whispers faded into silence. Exhausted and shaken, the friends found their way back to their campsite, the forest returning to its eerie but bearable state. They knew they had narrowly escaped the clutches of an ancient evil, one that would forever haunt their memories. They vowed never to speak of their harrowing encounter, fearing that the malevolent spirit might rise again. The forest, however, continued to wait patiently, its secrets hidden in the shadows, ready to ensnare those who dared to venture too close. In the heart of a dense forest, shrouded in an eerie mist that never seemed to lift, 5 teenagers embarked on a daring adventure. Jacob, the group's daredevil, had heard stories about the Whispering Woods and its dark secrets. The tale spoke of a horrifying creature that lurked among the ancient trees, waiting for those foolish enough to enter. One gloomy afternoon, the group, comprising Jacob, Emily, Sarah, Alex, and Chris, set out on a hike into the heart of the Whispering Woods. Armed with flashlights and an abundance of youthful curiosity, they ventured deep into the forest, leaving behind the safety of the marked trails. As the shadows deepened, the forest took on an ominous quality. The trees seemed to close in around them, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Unnerving whispers carried on the wind, making the teens uneasy. But they pressed on, their excitement overriding their fear. Night fell swiftly, and the forest became an inky abyss. With each step, the group felt as though they were sinking deeper into a nightmare. Suddenly, their flashlights flickered, casting long, unsettling shadows that danced on the trees. Panic surged through them as they realized they were lost. "We should have never come here," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Jacob, determined to keep his composure, said, "Don't worry. We just need to find our way back to the trail." But finding their way back was easier said than done. The woods seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles. The whispers grew louder, as though the very forest itself was taunting them. As they stumbled through the darkness, a bone-chilling growl echoed through the trees. The teens froze in terror. Something was out there with them. What was that? Chris gasped. No one had an answer, but they knew they had to keep moving. They quickened their pace, hearts pounding, desperately trying to make sense of the forest's twisted maze. Hours passed, and exhaustion set in. Emily's flashlight died, leaving them with only one source of light. Fear clung to them like a suffocating shroud. The growls grew closer, and occasional glimpses of a monstrous silhouette among the trees sent shivers down their spines. "Stay together," Jacob urged, his voice quivering. "We have to stick together." Their remaining flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. The forest seemed to be playing tricks on their minds, distorting reality. They heard whispers, their names being called by eerie voices that seemed to come from all directions. "Emily, Chris, Sarah," the voices whispered. Terror-stricken, they huddled closer. It was then that they saw it, a pair of glowing, malevolent eyes in the darkness. The creature emerged from the shadows, its twisted, nightmarish form illuminated by the dying flashlight. It was a grotesque fusion of human and beast, with elongated limbs and jagged teeth. Screaming in unison, they turned and ran, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. The creature pursued them, its relentless pursuit driving them deeper into the heart of the Whispering Woods. They were trapped in a waking nightmare, unable to escape the relentless horror that pursued them. The forest itself seemed to aid the creature, the trees shifting and rearranging to block their path. Desperation fueled their every step as they fought to stay ahead of the relentless predator. Hours turned into an eternity as they ran for their lives. Exhausted and on the brink of collapse, they stumbled upon a clearing in the forest. The moonlight pierced through the canopy, revealing an ancient stone altar surrounded by gnarled trees. With no other options, they climbed onto the altar, their breaths ragged and fear-stricken. The creature closed in, its ghastly form illuminated in the moonlight. It growled, its eyes fixed on its prey. As it lunged, Jacob, driven by sheer desperation, grabbed a nearby stone and hurled it at the altar. It struck the ancient stone with a deafening crack, sending a shockwave through the forest. The trees quaked, and the creature let out an agonized howl, vanishing into the darkness. The forest itself seemed to rebel against the intruders. The trees contorted and twisted, creating a path back to safety. Gasping for breath, the teens stumbled out of the Whispering Woods, their faces etched with terror. They never spoke of that night again, but the horrors of the Whispering Woods haunted their nightmares for years to come. The forest had taken them to the brink of death, but they had escaped, forever marked by the terrifying ordeal they could never forget. Years had passed since the harrowing night when Jacob, Emily, Sarah, Alex, and Chris narrowly escaped the clutches of the monstrous entity that lurked within the Whispering Woods. They had each moved on with their lives, trying to forget the horrors they had witnessed in that accursed forest. But fate had other plans. One gloomy evening, Sarah received an old, weathered journal in the mail. It had no return address, only her name scrawled on the envelope. Inside, she found the handwritten account of a previous visitor to the Whispering Woods. The journal told of a cursed artifact hidden deep within the forest, a cursed artifact said to grant unimaginable power to anyone who could find it. Intrigued by the journal's cryptic entries, Sarah felt compelled to share it with her friends. They gathered at her house, and as they read through the journal together, the memories of that terrifying night flooded back. "I can't believe someone else went through what we did," Emily said, her voice trembling. Alex nodded. "And this artifact, it sounds dangerous." Jacob, ever the daredevil, couldn't resist the allure. "What if we find it? Think of the power we could have." Chris, the most cautious of the group, voiced his concerns. "We barely made it out alive last time. We don't know what we're getting into." But curiosity got the better of them. They decided to return to the Whispering Woods, not to confront the monster, but to find this elusive artifact and put an end to the curse that seemed to haunt them. Armed with the journal's directions, they embarked on their journey, their hearts heavy with a mix of fear and excitement. The forest hadn't changed, it was still as ominous and unsettling as they remembered. The whispers returned, growing louder and more insistent with each step. Days turned into nights as they delved deeper into the forest. They encountered strange phenomena, trees that seemed to move on their own, eerie apparitions that vanished when approached, and a pervasive sense that they were being watched. Just as they reached the heart of the Whispering Woods, they stumbled upon a hidden clearing. In its center lay a crumbling stone altar, just as the journal described. At its base, partially buried in the earth, they saw it, an ornate, ancient amulet, glinting with an otherworldly radiance. Emily cautiously reached for the amulet, her fingers trembling as she picked it up. The moment her hand touched it, a surge of power coursed through her, and her eyes filled with a strange, otherworldly knowledge. But before they could celebrate their find, the very ground beneath them trembled. The trees groaned and twisted, and the sinister growls echoed through the forest once more. The entity they thought they had escaped had returned, drawn by the amulet's power. Panicking, they tried to flee, but the forest seemed to conspire against them, its malevolent spirit determined to keep the amulet within its grasp. The entity closed in, its monstrous form materializing from the shadows. They knew they couldn't outrun it this time. Desperation gripped them as they realized the curse was far more insidious than they had ever imagined. The amulet was a trap, and they had fallen right into it. As the creature bore down on them, Sarah, filled with a newfound understanding of the amulet's magic, raised it high and chanted an incantation she had gleaned from the journal. The forest recoiled, and the entity let out an anguished wail, vanishing into the darkness once more. But the price of their escape was high. The forest had claimed the amulet, and with it, their memories of the Whispering Woods. They stumbled out of the forest, their minds clouded, unable to recall the events of that fateful night. Years passed, and the group went their separate ways once more, haunted by a sense of loss and the knowledge that they had faced unimaginable horrors, yet couldn't remember why. The Whispering Woods, it seemed, would forever hold on to its secrets, leaving them with only a lingering sense of unease and a nagging feeling that some curses were better left undiscovered.